My name is Mara Whitfield, and I am 34 years old. 5 years ago, my father stood in our driveway and told me I was uneducated and worthless, and had me thrown out of the family. Last month, I was the one who decided whether his favorite daughter lived or died on my operating table, and afterward, I fired myself from her case in front of him. Before I tell you what happened, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story resonates with you. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to where it started. My father, Richard Whitfield, grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, in a town nobody outside of it could find on a map. His own father drank, and his mother worked doubles at a diner. And the one thing Richard decided, somewhere around age 12, was that credentials were the only thing standing between a person and the laundromat. Not talent. Not love. Letters after your name. He put himself through night school typing invoices by day. And by the time he had his own small logistics company, he had built an entire religion around one commandment. A title is armor, and a person without one is exposed. He wasn't cruel because he hated me. He was cruel because he was still, at 58 years old, terrified of that apartment above the laundromat, and he needed at least one of his children to prove the fear had been worth it. That child was supposed to be Chloe. My sister was 2 years younger than me, and from the time she could talk, she was praised for things I had already done quietly and without applause. When I made honor roll, my mother said, "Good." When Chloe made honor roll, there was a dinner. I don't say this to be dramatic. I say it because it's the kind of detail you don't notice is warping you until you're 30 and still flinching at restaurant reservations. Here's the first scene I want you to see clearly. Thanksgiving. The year I was 26. I was in my second year of medical school, deep in the kind of exhaustion that lives in your teeth. Chloe had just finished an online MBA program, 18 months. Mostly self-paced. My father stood at the head of the table, wine glass raised, and introduced her to 12 relatives as the future of this family. He did not mention me. Not once. My aunt finally asked, gently, "And how's medical school going, Mara?" And my father answered for me, "She's still figuring some things out." I was in the top third of my class. I said nothing. I remember the smell of the turkey fat congealing on my plate. This thick, sweet smell I can still call up if I try, though I couldn't tell you a single word anyone said for the rest of that meal. The second scene is worse, because it's the one that detonated everything. In my second year, I failed one practical exam. One. A suturing station. A bad night's sleep. A hand tremor from too much coffee and not enough food. I retook it 2 weeks later and scored in the 94th percentile. But my mother, Diane, I had gotten wind of the initial failure from a family friend whose daughter was in my cohort. And by the time it reached her, it had transformed. At her book club, at her hair salon, at Chloe's engagement shower, my mother told anyone who would listen that I had washed out of medical school. Not failed one station. Washed out. The words took on a life independent of the facts, the way a lie always does when it's more satisfying than the truth. I found out about it from a cousin, over text, 3 days before my father called me into the driveway. I still don't know if my mother believed what she was saying or just liked how it sounded. I've turned that question over more times than I can count, and I've never landed anywhere solid. The driveway. I need to tell you about the driveway. It was early October, and there was a specific smell of wet asphalt that I associate with that entire year of my life. A smell I catch sometimes on other streets in other cities, and it stops me cold for half a second before I remember where I actually am. My bags were already packed. My mother had done it. I found out later she'd done it that afternoon, folding my clothes into 2 duffel bags while I was at a study group, deciding my exit before I'd even been told I was leaving. My father stood on the front step, arms crossed, and Chloe watched from the porch behind him. I silent, holding a mug of tea with both hands like she was cold. Though it wasn't cold enough for that. "I heard what happened at school," he said. "Nothing happened. I failed one exam and retook it." "I'm fine." "That's not what your mother heard." "Then your mother heard wrong." He didn't raise his voice. That was the worst part. He never raised his voice with me. Only with people he respected enough to fight. With me, he just delivered verdicts. "I will not support an uneducated and worthless dropout," he said. "Get out of my sight before you tarnish the reputation of this family further." I looked at Chloe. She looked at her tea. I didn't cry in that driveway. I want to be honest and tell you I don't remember if I said anything back at all. I've replayed this 100 times and I genuinely can't reconstruct my own response. Only his voice. Only the two duffel bags at my feet. One with a broken zipper I'd meant to fix for months and never had. I picked up both bags, and I walked to my car, and I drove to a friend's couch. And that was, functionally, the end of my family. Here is what nobody in that family ever asked about the 6 years that followed. I couldn't stay in my original medical school program without financial backing. My father pulled the moment I left a tuition cosign he revoked out of spite, before I'd even found somewhere to sleep that first night. I spent 4 months working 2 jobs, a diner shift and weekend tutoring, just to requalify for independent federal loans and claw back into a program. A full year behind where I should have been. I applied to residency programs blind, with no family connections, and, I'd later learn, at least one outright blacklisting from a hospital where my father golfed with the chief of surgery. I matched, eventually, into a mid-tier general surgery residency in a city I'd never been to. And from there fought my way, application by application, paper by paper, into a neurosurgery fellowship that took me apart and rebuilt me over 4 years. There was a winter, my second year of residency, when my apartment's heat went out in December and my landlord took 11 days to fix it. I studied in the hospital library because it was the only warm, a well-lit place I had access to at 2 a.m. I slept in my coat more nights than I want to count. I told no one in my family, because there was no one in my family to tell. There was a night, the following spring, when I missed my own medical school graduation, not the ceremony, the actual conferral, the moment the degree became real because I called my father's number from a hospital hallway, hoping. And it rang 4 times and went to voicemail. And I stood there in my scrubs with my hand still holding the phone for what felt like a very long time before I picked up an extra shift instead of going home to sit with that silence. I don't know what I expected. I think some small, humiliating part of me expected him to pick up. I built my career the way you build anything real slowly. In the dark. With no one clapping, I made attending. I became chief of service in the neurosurgery department at Ashgrove Memorial. My father did not know any of this. As far as my family understood, I was still the girl who'd washed out. I want to pause here for a second. If your family did this to you, took a rumor and used it as an excuse to erase you, what would you do? Drop a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit the button, because what happens next changes everything. I was in the middle of a Tuesday, reviewing scans in my office, when my pager went off for a VIP trauma bay consult. I didn't know it was Chloe until I was already halfway down the hall. The ER's VIP trauma bay is a private wing, glass-walled, reserved for cases that need discretion public figures, hospital donors, occasionally families who simply pay for the privilege of privacy in a crisis. I heard my parents before I saw them, my father's voice, sharp and clipped, the same voice from the driveway, carried down the corridor. This is unacceptable. Do you understand who we are? I want your top neurosurgeon, not some resident. My daughter deserves the best this hospital has, and if that's not available, I will have her transferred by helicopter within the hour. A nurse was trying, calmly, to explain that the on-call attending was already en route. My mother stood with her arms crossed, refusing to sit in the family waiting chairs, telling anyone in earshot that this hospital was clearly understaffed and clearly not equipped for a patient of Chloe's importance. I stopped outside the glass. Through it, I could see Chloe on the gurney, pale, unconscious, an IV line already running, a nurse charting vitals. I want to be clinical here, because that's how I experienced it. I didn't feel triumph. I felt the specific, narrow focus that takes over when a patient needs me and the rest of the room becomes noise. I walked in, I pulled down my mask. 2 seconds of silence. My father's face changed first. My mother's a half second later. Mara, my father said. Dr. Whitfield, I corrected. Lead attending. Neurosurgery. I'll be taking over Chloe's case. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I pulled up the wall monitor. Chloe's chart. Full imaging history, 6 years of it. More than I'd expected. More than they'd expected me to have access to. 22% blood alcohol at intake, I said. Staccato. Flat. Subdural. Hematoma. Left temporal. Not her first. Third documented head trauma in 4 years. Liver enzymes, consistent with sustained substance use. Not an isolated incident. That's not, she doesn't. My mother started. There's a concierge physician's name on 6 of these prior scans. I said. Off insurance. Cash pay. Someone's been keeping this out of any record that would follow her. I'd guess that was expensive. I didn't ask it as a question. I already knew the answer. Because I'd pulled the billing history before I walked in, a habit from a career they'd never watched me build. The kind of quiet competence that doesn't announce itself. It just happens. At Doya. M. In an office no one from my family had ever set foot in. Down the hall. Near the vending machines. A food services aide had stopped mid-bite of a sandwich. Frozen. Sandwich still raised halfway to her mouth. Watching through the glass like she'd wandered into the wrong scene of a movie and couldn't find her way back out. You've been paying to hide this, I said to my father. For years. He didn't answer. My mother's hand had gone to her mouth. I turned back to the monitor. Back to Chloe. This part matters. So I want to say it plainly. I did my job. I did it well. I ordered the craniotomy. I performed it myself. 4 hours. Clean margins. No complications. Whatever my father was to me, Chloe was still a patient on my table. And I have never once let the wrong person pay for someone else's cruelty. She stabilized. I came back out to the family consult room afterward, still in my scrub cap, to update them. Because that's the job too. My father stood when I came in. He looked, for the first time in my memory, smaller than the room. She's stable, I said. The bleed is controlled. She'll need a longer recovery than she's had the last 2 times. Because this time someone's actually going to document it. Mata Dr. Whitfield, he started. Thank you. I don't know what to. You were right, I said. I am uneducated and worthless to this family. Therefore, I lack the status to continue treating your daughter. I am officially transferring her care to our first-year intern. Good luck with your family's reputation. I set the chart down on the table between us and I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. What happened after moved the way these things always move. Quietly. Then all at once. The way a news ticker reports a slow disaster in short factual lines, with no room for anyone's feelings about it. The hospital's compliance office opened an inquiry within the week into the concierge physician who'd been billing Chloe's family in cash to keep her scans off any centralized record, a pattern that, once flagged, triggered a review of 2 other patients under the same doctor's care. That physician lost hospital privileges within a month. My father's logistics company had 3 long-standing investors. 2 of them were personal friends of families who'd heard some version of the ER story secondhand within weeks. Small towns dress themselves up as cities. But the gossip travels at the same speed. One investor quietly restructured his position out of the company by spring. My father never spoke of it publicly. I only know because a former colleague of his, someone who'd known me before the driveway, reached out to tell me. Unprompted. As though he needed me to know the story hadn't stayed contained. My mother stopped attending her book club sometime that winter. I don't know if that was shame or grief or something else. I've stopped trying to narrate my mother's interior life. I was never any good at it. Even when we spoke, Chloe went into a court-adjacent mandated treatment program after a second incident 4 months later, not related to me. Not related to the hospital. Just the ordinary continuation of a pattern that had been running long before I ever walked into that trauma bay. I heard about it from a mutual cousin, the same one who'd texted me about the washed out rumor all those years ago. Some information, apparently, still finds me whether I want it to or not. My father tried to reach me once, through that same colleague. About 5 months after the surgery, a message, relayed secondhand. He wanted to talk. Reimagined. Just talk. I thought about calling the number the colleague passed along. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time one evening, on my own couch, in my own apartment, that I pay for with my own name on the lease. I didn't call. I still think about that Thanksgiving sometimes. The smell of the turkey fat. My aunt's kind. Useless question. I think about the driveway more than I'd like to admit. The wet asphalt smell. The broken zipper on that duffel bag. I still have that bag. Not metaphorically, I mean I still own the actual, physical duffel bag. Zipper still broken. Sitting on the top shelf of the closet in my hospital office. Tucked beside the shelf where I keep my second surgical achievement award. The one from 3 years ago that no one from my family ever saw me receive. I don't display the bag. I don't hide it either. It's just there, next to the award. The way two true things can sit beside each other without needing to resolve into a lesson. Some mornings I take it down and put my running shoes in it before my 5 a.m. laps around the hospital track. Because it's the right size. Because it still works. Broken zipper and all. And because I decided a long time ago that the things that were used to hurt me don't automatically stay poisoned forever. Sometimes they just become luggage again. If this story touched you, hit the like button. Tell me your story in the comments. Subscribe for more. And check the description for the next story. Take care of yourself.